Hey guys, I just had the greatest conversation with Chelsea Husum. I am so excited for you to watch this. You know why? Because I love people who really just want to inspire the world and they are doing things, right? And so, what I like about this story and the way we spoke was it was a very natural conversation between two friends, and it was about life and transitioning and how things change in your life and that it's okay. Like, she went from wanting to be a broadcaster, like Barbara Walters, to owning her own construction business. Okay. As a woman, as you know, the construction business is a very male dominated construction industry. I think she was saying that it's like 9% is women in this construction industry. But how amazing, right? To go from one vision or wanting to do something in life to completely doing something different right now in life. And that is okay. And I think that's what I want you to take away from this is how life transitions and how beautiful that can be and how it's okay to not just do what you went to school for or what people expect of you, but to do what your heart wants you to do, what it is that you have in you that drives you towards something different. So I think you're going to love this conversation. Let's go. Let's do it. What's up, y'all? This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. I love that you're hanging out with us today. I love this community. I love all you straight talkers out there. And the way that you keep pouring into this community is so freaking cool. So we're over 100,000 downloads now. I used to always say, we're going to make it. We already made it. We've passed it. Let's move on to the 200,000 now, okay? Guys, you guys are amazing. And you know that I go around this amazing planet finding the best humans I can find to come on here to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. I have a really special guest with y'all. She embodies this spirit of resilience and triumph. There's like none other like Chelsea Husum, okay? She is here. She's dynamic. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author, a speaker. She's a podcast host. I mean, this woman is doing it all and a super mom, okay? Super mom of two. She's not just a survivor. She's a powerhouse who has turned her life through tough moments into stepping stones for success. And you guys know we love talking about that stuff here. She is the founder of a small construction company in this male-dominated industry. And y'all know I love talking about that, especially with someone who has been in the hospitality and being a chef into a whole male-dominated industry. Chelsea's journey is a testament to the power of grit and determination. Now, she is here to share her insights on how to transform challenges into victories and how to emerge stronger than ever. And I love this stuff, right? So let's get ready, y'all. Buckle in. Let's get inspired. Let's be empowered. And let's welcome Chelsea onto Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. How, Chelsea? How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait.
I can't wait either. I love talking to women who are like trailblazers, and you are
Thank you.
definitely that. So I'm really happy to have you here. So one of the first things I like to do for my audience is I like them to get to know you. So my
Yeah.
first question out the gate is always, who are you, Chelsea? Because wherever you take us, that's where we're going. Who are you,
Okay.
Chelsea? Who are you?
Well, I'll kind of go back, but I am 40 years old. I live in Denver or south of Denver with my two sons. I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, so I'm
Oh,
constantly
wow.
running around chasing them.
Mm-hmm.
As you can imagine, married to my husband. And I kind of ended up here. I'm from a small town in South Dakota. Grew up there, and then I have a Spanish and broadcast journalism degree, and had to get my internship for my broadcasting. And I was like, well, South Dakota didn't. The options filled up quickly, so I actually made the trip to Denver and did my internship here, and then ended up staying. So the college bill loans started coming 6 months later. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, okay, I need a job. So I had wanted to be the next Barbara Walters, was convinced, I was going to be
So cool.
famous, all
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But then I started looking at jobs, and you make 20 grand and work nights and weekends. And the likelihood of, quote, making it was not great at all.
Right.
So I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. So I just took a job as a temp like a receptionist for a bunch of different companies downtown in Denver. And kind of comical. You take a South Dakota girl, you plop her in Denver with a bunch of one-way streets. Didn't go very well. Like I went down one-way streets wrong all the time. I'm like, what is this? um, and then through that company, I ended up getting a job at a experiential trade show marketing company. Worked there about 5 or 6 years. And then it's with me, it's like I get this soul feeling that I was just like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything really worthwhile or
Right.
changing the world, right? So I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So did some soul searching. I ended up quitting that. I got my master's in education and I became a high school Spanish teacher for 10 years.
Oh,
So did
wow.
that, like, completely different. But
Really different.
yeah, but I really loved it. The last year, though, it was pretty rough. And one day a kid called me an effing waste of space. And I was like,
Mm,
oh,
mm.
okay, this is where I'm at. This is just, and I just realized I didn't love it anymore. So again, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, now what am I gonna do? Because I got
Right.
no options and I have no idea. So I applied at all these jobs. No one called me at all. It was just crickets. And the only job I got offered was as an office manager for a different construction company. So I took that, just desperate to get out of teaching. And thank God I got out in 2019, right before COVID,
Right.
because that
Oof.
would have been
That would have been
brutal.
tough. Yeah,
brutal.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And then I worked that job and I started my construction company in March of 2020 because randomly, what else are we doing at that time in life? But
Construction did well though during COVID.
it
Construction did well.
did, and
Yeah.
I really took 2020 to build the company. I really didn't
Mhm.
do much. It was like, setting the pieces in place,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
21 came out, but I worked the other job and ran my company till April of 22, which at that point, I'm
Yeah.
like, I physically and emotionally cannot do this anymore.
Right.
So then stepped out into mine, and honestly, I never would have thought I had zero desire to be an entrepreneur, would never have thought I'd be in construction, but I love how life takes its
Yeah.
twists and turns and you end up
Yeah.
where you're meant to be because I freaking love it. It's like what I'm meant to do, right? So,
Right.
yeah,
Isn't
it's
that
been a
something?
crazy journey.
Yeah. It's been a beautiful journey, right? Like but
Yeah.
an expensive journey.
Yeah, yes.
Right, with all the education, which
Yeah.
has been it's so funny. I think that that is something also that's happening to a lot of the youth today, right? Like they're going to these
Mhm.
very expensive colleges. At some point, what was it? Maybe in the 90s or so when we had decided that, trade schools and community
Yes.
college was an insult and everything
Yep.
had to
Or
be,
you were a
you
failure
know,
if you
oh,
went
you
to
were a
those, right?
failure, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Oh,
you
yeah,
go
they
to
pushed
community
that.
college, like,
Mhm.
it's a shame that we did that to society. I remember growing
Totally.
up in shop class and loving like wood and all
Mhm.
of that stuff. It was really cool. I learned how to sew my own clothes, all
Yep.
of that kind of stuff that I really strongly feel that needs to come back to the school system,
Oh,
and yeah,
completely. Yeah,
right?
they made you feel like you were a failure for a very long time, and now
Yep.
what we're dealing with. There's a major shortage in
Mate.
the plumbing,
Yep.
electrical fields,
Yep.
all these trade things, and now sadly, schools are backpedaling like, "Oh, just kidding, you're not a failure if you go to trade school. Actually,
Right.
we'll pay for your apprenticeship and you make really good money, like more
Yeah.
than most people." And it's
Right.
an amazing career, and there's all these things in construction and whatever, but yeah, they made kids feel bad for wanting to do that, and now we have this
Hmm.
massive shortage. It's
Yeah.
pretty messed up.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty messed up, and it's a massive shortage, and we've changed the landscape of what kids used to be. I remember we used to go
Right?
outside, we used to play, we used to scrape
Yeah.
our knees, we used to
Go
like
throw
you
a
had no
rock,
choice.
play in the dirt.
Right.
Yeah.
Build things like you wanted to
Yeah.
build things, like you would be sitting out there building forts and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And now it's can I build a fort on a video game, right? So
Exactly.
the landscape has changed. So
Mhm.
it's very interesting to me how you ended up in construction, but I could see why you love it too. My
Yeah.
husband's is a contractor
Oh,
and he,
nice.
he's been doing it for 35, 40 years or whatever it is now at this point.
That's awesome.
And is very good in his field. But it is a field lacking. Like he's
Mhm.
constantly frustrated because he just can't find good
Good
work.
people.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm
Oh, yeah.
saying? So it's hard.
Yeah.
So isn't that interesting though how life took you from broadcasting and wanting to be Barbara Walters to
Mhm.
owning your own construction
Yeah,
company?
super
I
random.
love that. I love that. But I love that you and I think this true for all of us. All of our lives take us to these different stages and series, right?
Mhm.
Like I help women, kind of like find what their gifts and talents are so they can create their
Mhm. I
coaching
love
business.
that.
That's what I help
Yep.
them with. And I realize, and they realize too, like, don't get stuck in, oh, I have a broadcasting degree. What
Yeah. It
then,
really
like,
doesn't even
what
matter
do you
anymore.
do though? Right. Like, what is it that you love to do though? What is that gift? Because our gifts,
Mhm.
I think, drive us through, but
Yeah.
it changes. Right.
And it's okay
So
to change.
and
It's
it's okay
okay
to
to change.
change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at
And
me. I reinvented myself completely
yeah.
numerous times, like, "Oh, now I'm gonna do this." Like,
Right.
"What?
How
What?" You know?
interesting.
It's so
So
random.
interesting. I mean, listen, you went from like broadcasting to like working in an office to doing
Yeah.
what doing what you're doing today from teaching. I mean, like it's
Mhm.
all different. It's beautiful,
It
right?
is.
And I'm
Yep.
sure that you find I mean, okay, so my husband, of course, and we're Latino, right? So
Mhm.
my husband works in the construction industry. Thank goodness that he knows Spanish. It's the
Yeah.
same way with me. I work in the culinary and hospitality world. Thank
Yep.
goodness I know Spanish.
Yeah.
Chelsea, how awesome is it that you were a Spanish teacher,
I
right? You
know. I
probably
know.
can communicate a lot, to people who have this amazing amount of trade and skill
Mhm.
set, but maybe don't have the English part that well, right? Do you find
Yeah,
yourself going
definitely.
back to your Spanish?
I have used it. In the old company, I actually used it more than I even do now because every year we would get, gosh, like 10 to 20 H-2B visa workers from Mexico. So I
Mhm.
would do all the paperwork, but they didn't speak English at all. So they would
Right.
call me, they would text me always in Spanish. So I feel like I daily was speaking Spanish. And all of my employees now, they're bilingual, they speak Spanish and English, but it's like, so I feel like my Spanish is a little rustier now because I'm not like sitting having hours
Right.
and hours of conversation, but I definitely it's all in there. It's just
Right,
digging
yeah.
it out. But
Right.
and I also, I guess in my head it's like I don't want to I communicate with them in English because I don't want to say the wrong construction term
Right.
and miss like it's intense. You know what I
Oh,
mean? And
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
you need to be safe and this is such an intense industry, right? So I don't want to like miscommunicate because I
Oh,
don't
yeah, for
know
sure.
that one word or something. But yes, I
Yeah.
can definitely funny story, 2 years ago, we went out for a really nice dinner for our Christmas dinner for the company. And I said, okay, bring a plus one. And one of my employees was like, "Hey, my childhood friend is in town from Mexico. Can I bring her?" I'm like, "Yeah, bring her." And I sat down and I was like, "Hi, how are you?" And I could immediately tell she didn't know any English. So for this 3-hour dinner, I to make her feel welcome, right? I switched to Spanish for the whole time. And my employees have never
Oh,
heard me
they must
like
be like
I probably sounded like a 2-year-old, but they have never heard me to that extent. They're like, "Dang, we really didn't know." They
right,
knew that I could
right,
speak a little, but yeah,
right.
it was
The cool
cool.
thing is they're probably like, "Okay, no more hablando de Chelsea,
Yeah,
no more.
right.
She is
She
our
knows
boss
what we're
after all.
saying. Yeah.
Cállate, cállate." So
Yeah.
funny. So, Chelsea, tell me a little bit about, that transition for you getting into the construction industry, right?
Mhm.
Because, it's it is a male-dominated industry. It
Mhm.
just is, right? I
Yeah.
mean, my
Yeah, there's
husband
like
laughs at me all the time.
9% women.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yeah, it's so
If that.
small. Like my
Mhm.
husband's like, "Oh, measure," because my husband built a bed. And he's like, "Could you measure the inside of the bed for me?" Sure. I give him the measurements. He still comes up and measures. I'm like, "Why are you measuring?" He
You
goes,
don't
"Babe,
trust me?
you were off by a little bit. You were off by like a quarter of an inch." I'm like, "Whatever, dude." So, but it is
That's funny.
a male dominated industry. And
Mhm.
I'm just wondering, first of all, how was that for you? Because
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you got the same respect and
Mhm.
the same, did people honor your presence and respect your presence when you were, building your business, right? Because
Yeah.
that's a real thing. So tell me a little
Mhm.
bit about that.
I personally have been pretty lucky, honestly. Like, I haven't had people be jerks to me because I'm a woman. And if
Mhm.
honestly, if they are, I'm not going to work with them again. Like, I
Right.
won't answer your
Right.
call again. You know what I mean? So I luckily
Mhm.
get to pick and choose. But I've really lucked out where people have taken me under their wing and really supported me, men and women, which is
Good.
really cool. I will get sometimes be like, I'll get a phone call and they're like, "Well, what do you do with the company?" I'm like, "Oh, I own it." And they're like, "Oh, okay, cool." I mean, they're, like,
Yeah.
shocked a little bit, and I'm like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I run it, I own it." And they're like, "Oh." So I more get, like, maybe shocked that way, but I have been lucky. I have a lot of female friends. They've worked in this industry 20, 30 years. So they probably and dealt with a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
And I'm
Mhm.
not out on a job site every day. Like I do go to job sites, but I'm also in the office and I'm out at, events and meeting people. So
Right,
really
right.
just my personality is like I I'm just a real genuine person. So I'm like what you see is what you get, and I think just people respect that about me, and we
Mhm,
we
mhm.
connect really well. It's all about relationships for me.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Mhm.
But I remember when I was running this kitchen, and I'll never forget that the head of that kitchen, I won't mention his name, was like, women really can't. Meanwhile, I'm running the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
I would never, have a woman run the kitchen. I think men should be running kitchens, and I'm like, yeah, okay, so it's time for me to go. So
Yeah, you're
I,
like,
you know, I
"Mm,
kind of
okay."
just left and started running I actually helped build a kitchen from the ground up and
That's
ran that
awesome.
kitchen very successfully
Yeah.
in papers and everything. Like, it was very
Mhm.
successful. So I'm like, I guess women kind of can run a kitchen, but like,
Yep.
it's the same thing, right? Like, I think people, see a blonde hair white woman coming to the
Mhm.
site, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh, are you the receptionist, or are you the person
Yeah.
taking notes?
Exactly.
Right?
You're like,
Yeah.
"No."
You
Well, and
know,
I was at an event yesterday for, women in construction, amazing women there, and we were talking
love
about,
that.
and I've heard this from quite a few people. So they'll be, like, doing a site visit, and it's all men and one woman, and the woman's, like, the boss or the person in charge, right?
Mhm,
And whoever the men are talking, like, looking at the other men,
mhm,
and
mhm.
the guys are like, "Well, ask her. I don't
Yeah,
know."
yeah,
Like, but it's funny, they're just naturally looking to the men
yeah,
for the answers, and they're like, again, "Ask her. She's in
yeah,
charge. I don't
right,
know." But it's,
right.
it's just weird.
Yeah, it is. It's
Mhm.
weird, but I think it's just a custom, right? Because
It is.
I
Yeah.
remember when this guy passed right by me and went right to my sous chef and was like,
Mhm.
"Sir, I know you're in charge of this. This was amazing." And he's like, "That wasn't me. Oh, where's
Mhm.
the head chef? Where is he? Where is he?" He's like, "He's
Mhm.
a she. That's it."
And
And
you
the
walked
guy
right by
came,
her.
yeah, yeah, he came right to me. He put his head down. He goes, "I owe you an apology." I said, "Sure, go ahead." You know
You're
what
like,
I'm saying?
Yeah.
I wasn't, I'm like, you're go ahead because you literally assumed,
Mhm.
and you
Yeah.
deserve to be embarrassed about that.
Yeah.
You know? So
Oh,
tell me,
that's
are you in
funny.
construction or residential, or what do
Mhm.
you
So we're
do?
in commercial construction. We
Okay.
do it's called ground penetrating radar. So it's a little machine that scans concrete, either the floor or
Oh,
the wall, and it will say more or less there's something here you can safely cut here. So it's like finding things in the concrete, so you're not
wow.
cutting into post tension cable or rebar or whatever that if you don't want to cut into those.
Right.
And then we do core drilling, which that is then we are cutting circular holes in the floor or wall in the concrete. And then my biggest clients are mechanical and electrical companies. So then more or less we're coming and cutting all the holes for them, and then they're coming in and filling them
Wow.
up with maybe drains or electrical boxes, or I don't even know what they just I just cut the holes for them and
Right.
leave and let them take it from there. So yeah.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
we're in
That's so
commercial
cool.
construction. So we've been at airports, prisons, schools, hospitals, libraries,
Wow.
all kinds of stuff.
I love that. I
Thank
love this
you.
so much. I love
Thank
that.
you.
I love it. So tell me about navigating this industry now. Are you feeling, because you said you
Mhm,
love it. You said you
I
love it,
do.
right?
Mhm.
So you're feeling this is your thing, this is your niche, this is where you thrive?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'm a really organized person and I'm a really hard worker. So when I got into it, I didn't know much. I learned the hard way. The
Mhm.
company I took a job with, I mean, I got trained for like 2 days and then that was it. And I'm like, wait, what? I don't know what I'm doing at all. And there's a lot of really intense stuff,
Oh yeah, I'm
paperwork
sure.
and different things you have to do. And so I cried a lot. I like asked a ton of questions. Sometimes I would even ask the clients, I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Can you like help me? But I finally learned it. And then when I started my company, I had that background, right? I was able
Yeah.
to pull from that. And I still I don't know. I didn't know everything, right? But the cool part is I have a few women friends that they run different companies. They're the owners, they run them. They're doing multi-millions a year. Like amazing. They have 200 employees, like 100 employees.
Wow.
And they're just cool women, so I could call them and be like, "Hey, this happened. this situation, like, how would you deal with this? What, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they'd be like, "Oh, honey, no, they're bullying you. Don't even worry about it. Move on." Like,
Mhm.
it's not an issue. Cause I'm like, "Oh, did I do something wrong?" Or whatever, you question
Yeah.
yourself. But,
That's really
yeah,
good.
it's
You have
been really cool.
mentors. Yeah.
Yes,
They're like
yes.
mentors. That's really great. Are they in the
Mhm.
same field when you call them? Or the construction
They're
field
in
or?
commercial construction, yeah. So, and
Okay.
they don't do exactly what I do, but they're in commercial construction. So
I
they
love
get
that.
the insurance, they get all the stuff that
Yeah.
I deal with, they just deal with it in a different, like, in a different scope, but they're still
Mhm.
dealing with it. Mhm.
Are you seeing a rise in this industry having more women?
When I started in it, it was about 11%, and now I think this year's like 9. So,
Mhm.
sadly, I mean, they're really trying to get more women in it, but they're not. It, for some reason, like, with the numbers this year, they're saying has gone down a little bit.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised though. I think it's going down both in men and women. Sadly,
Yeah,
with
yeah. Oh, yeah, in
construction,
general.
yeah, in
Mhm,
general, yeah.
mhm.
So, I but you're using a little bit of your broadcasting degree, right? Because you have your own podcast, right?
I am working on starting one. That is, like, my
Okay.
next thing. So, my book came out in February, and then I've been a speaker for quite a few years, but now I'm kind of moving more towards, in Colorado National. And then, yes, I that's on my list. I'm literally trying to name, or nail down the name for my
Okay.
podcast, which is really hard. I'm like, "Oh, I love this," and then I go look. I'm like, "There's 5 of those."
Right.
"Oh, I like this." That's hard for me to find a cool name, but one
Right.
that's not taken. So that
Right.
is literally what I'm working on now too. Yeah, and it's, ultimately my construction company is my job and what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
am
of
responsible
course.
for, and I have
Of course.
employees. So that always comes first. And then all this other stuff too is like passion projects.
Right, right, right.
Mhm.
Well, so tell me a little bit about the book. What's the book about?
Yeah, so it's called Real Vibes Only: Unapologetic Confessions of a Hot Mess Mompreneur. And it's
Love
just,
that.
it is a bunch of short stories from my life of things I've overcome. And some are pretty intense, some are lighter, but really it's just, the goal, I guess, with it is to give people permission to own their story, get rid of guilt and shame. Like, I understand everyone's gone through hard times. We all do. That's like the
Yeah.
human experience, right? When
Yeah.
you're in it, it feels like it's going to break you, but I hope to give people hope that
Yeah.
you can get through, you will get through, and you'll actually come out stronger on the other side. And whether you then go write a book or podcast about it, you don't have to do that. At the very least, make peace with yourself and get rid of shame
Mhm.
and guilt and love yourself, and
Mhm.
heal, right?
Yeah, I
That's
love
kind of the
this.
goal. And really also, I just want to be real and vulnerable and be like, I'm a hot mess most of the time, but I always want to be a better person. I'm always growing. I'm always pushing myself. Like, so, and that is messy. And I don't ever I want people to quit trying to be perfect. We
Mhm.
all feel so
Mhm.
alone because, like, oh, I'm going through something, but I can't say anything about it because then my friends are going to not think I'm perfect. And I'm like, that's crap. I'm
Yeah, it
sorry,
is.
but, like, stop. Like, why are we
Yeah.
doing that to ourselves?
Yeah, but I love that, other angle of you, right? Because
Mhm. Yeah.
you're an entrepreneur and you're into this industry that's really male dominated, so you have to be a
Mhm.
little bit,
Yeah. Like,
tough-skinned and a little
strong.
tough to
Yeah.
be in that,
Yep.
but then you're also very vulnerable and also
Yes. It's
going
a weird
yeah,
double.
no, it's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
right? I'm the same way, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm really tough in the kitchen. I'm very this way. This
Mhm.
is how
Mhm.
this goes. Let's get this right. And
Yep.
then I also help women with dealing with shame and
Yes.
unforgiveness and all that kind of stuff too.
Mhm.
So I think that is a multifaceted way of being a human being, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I could see your podcast being really great at
Thank you.
bridging those things.
Yeah.
So is that what you want to talk about, women in construction, or this other side of you, which is more about, people telling their stories and shame and all
Yeah.
of that? Yeah.
I think, I mean, I'll definitely have some of my women in construction friends on there because I love their stories.
Mhm.
But I think overall, I want the podcast, I want people to be inspired, very similar to yours. I want people to listen to it and maybe get a little tip that enhances their life, or get
Yeah.
inspired, or find some hope if they're having a tough day, or, just when you're done, like, yes, I feel really good. I feel connected
Mhm.
and seen and heard. And, oh, I heard story today from the guest that was like resonated with me, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's what I'm hoping for, is just people to share their stories. We all have a story to share,
Oh, yeah.
all kinds of different ones. And it's so powerful to allow people to share that so other people, yeah, don't feel alone.
Exactly. And I think
Mhm.
that's what's happening in this big world is we're getting siloed. It's
Yeah.
funny, right? Because there's so much technology, but that's actually, I think, a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
It's a good thing and a really
Mhm.
bad thing because we
Yeah.
used to have to go out to see friends. We used to
Yes.
have to go out to engage. And now we can just, oh, you got a second? Let's have a Zoom call real quick. And we literally feel this is a true physical
Connection. Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
And it is a virtual connection, but I can't
Not
hug
the
you, you
same.
know?
It's not the
It's
same.
not the
Yeah.
same. It's not like
Yeah.
me and you are sitting down at a cafe having a cup of coffee. There's something
Exactly.
different about that energy,
That
right?
energy for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Like,
So
we're
I'm
more
glad.
connected than ever, but we're also more alone than,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
right? I mean, people
Mhm.
feel more alone than ever,
They
but we're
do.
quote unquote more connected. It's like, it's very odd. Yeah. I prefer
Yeah.
in-person energy
Me
completely.
too. Me
Yeah.
too. Me too. So for those who are listening to you right now and are like, going through that change that you went through too when you were like leaving the teaching
Mhm.
angle, right?
Mhm.
And you're like, I'm not happy. I don't
Mhm.
want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is one of the things as becoming an entrepreneur and then getting that job? And first of all, I love that you did that because that's reality, Chelsea. Most of us
Mhm.
have to get that job to
Yeah.
sustain what it is we want to
You need
do.
money to
I
live.
You need
Like,
money. And there's a lot
yeah.
of lies, right? There's a lot of things that irritate me that I,
Mhm.
do a lot of my lives on because it
Mhm.
irritates me when somebody tells you, "Oh, just join my program and I'm going to make you six figures in 3 days," right? Like,
Yeah, that's
no,
yeah.
you're going to have to work and that's
Mhm.
okay because that
Yep.
work I see it as a interest-free loan. You're
Mhm.
working and now you could take that money and
Building it.
building it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
A lot of people
Um
have to do that, and that's
yeah.
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 Yeah. It's
Exactly.
okay.
So what was it that light bulb for you or what was it that transitioned you to say I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Do you remember those moments? Do you
Mhm.
remember that moment where you had to transition?
To start my company, you mean?
No, to either to just
Oh,
leave
to
what you
get
were
out
not
of
happy
teaching in
with.
general.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a Gemini. I get if I'm bored real quick. And it's
Mhm.
like it
Mhm.
hits me and I'm like, yeah. I once I like mentally am done, I'm done really
Yeah.
fast,
Yeah.
which is kind of not
I'm the
great
same.
sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man. So it's, you know, I know in my soul that like that day that kid called me that, I remember I was sitting in my dark classroom and I looked over and it was like it said like September 18th and I'm like, who gonna be a long year. Like
Oh,
this is,
that's the beginning
I'm
of the
like, I
year.
gotta,
Holy
yeah,
cow.
I'm like, okay, you gotta suck this up, and I just don't like living. We know when we're not happy. I don't
Yeah.
like living like that. Like, I'm sure I was
Yeah.
miserable. My husband probably was like, "Oh my god, you're horrible," because I wasn't happy. And then it flows through your whole life. And
It
like, I'm
does.
not a person that can live like that. I have to be happy and like doing things that fill me up. I just have to be, or
Right.
I'm a mess.
Right.
So I think when I feel that gut feeling, it's scary, but then I'm like, "Okay, well, now what am I gonna do?" And I had to, like, each time I did that, right, even before I became a teacher, it's like, "Well, what do I wanna do in life?" Like, what and I remember that driving one morning, I was driving to, like, my first long-term sub job. I hadn't even got hired as a full-time teacher yet, and I was like, I had chills. I was like listening to a great song and I'm like, yes, I did it. Oh my God. I literally had chills. I was so freaking excited that I did this. And I'm like
Right.
gonna go out and do this. Right. And as long as I felt like that, it was great. But once I don't feel like that, I gotta move
Yeah.
on. I just
Right.
do.
Right. So you're saying just be intuitive, like listen to your
Yeah,
feelings and what you're
if
actually
you're
feeling.
not
Yeah.
happy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if you're not, it's scary, but like what is going to make you happy and start looking into that and
Yeah.
figuring out, yeah, do you need to get a different job to before you can jump right into it, build it on the side? What can you do to actually make it happen and be creative?
Yeah. And the other greatness to your story is you don't know where you're going to end up. So
Nope.
just seek for what your heart is trying to tell you that
Yep.
is leaning towards. But that does, don't worry about, oh my God, but Chelsea started her business. Chelsea
Yeah.
didn't know that when she went and got her job. You know
Nope.
what I
Had
mean? Like,
no
she
clue.
didn't know.
Yeah.
And she wrote a book and she's coming out with a podcast and she's a
Mhm.
speaker. Like those type of things just kind of happen in life. Like the opportunities come and
Yeah.
you go, okay, I think I'm gonna try that. You
Yeah,
know?
it's like I think be open to the magic. Like, I don't know where I'll be in 5 years, but there could be really I mean, I'm open to it all. Because again, I didn't think I'd end up here. So be open to it. Go just meet people, do things that light you up, and you'll find where, new opportunities will come to you, all this stuff. Yeah, I didn't even wanna write a book. So I wasn't, like, trying to meet a publisher or do any of that, like, at all. It just felt kinda like I randomly met this lady. I'm like, "Maybe I could do that." And then I was like, "Well, what would I even write about? I don't even know." And then it just poured out of me, and it
Yeah.
became what it
So
was
good.
meant to be, right?
So good. Yeah. I'm so glad. I'm so glad we had this conversation too. I love the
Yes, this is
journey
so
of
fun.
all of this stuff. It's so good
It's
because it's
crazy.
life. It's as
It
real. This is
is.
like real stuff, real
Mhm.
life. And
Yep.
it's not like trying to sell a product or a pipe dream, but
Mhm.
an idea that you can
Yes.
be what you really want to be and you do it one step at a
Yep.
time.
You're
You
never
do it
too
one
old.
step at a
You
time.
can
Right.
figure
Right.
it out. You know what
Right.
I mean? I love hearing about, like, a 95-year-old that's, like, doing this or that. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yes, that's so
Yeah,
cool."
I love that, right? Like, when I see those stories of, like, an 88-year-old that just graduated a medical school or
Yes.
something
Like,
like I'm like,
oh
because it
my
was her
gosh.
dream. I'm like, "Yes." I was
Yeah.
listening to this woman who was, I think, in her late 70s, early 80s or something,
Mhm.
became a bodybuilder from
That's
completely overweight and
amazing.
unhealthy to a bodybuilder
Yes.
because that's what she was wanted to always wanted to do, and she decided
Mhm.
one day, "F it. I'm just gonna do it."
Yes.
I'm like, "Good girl."
I know, I love
So good.
it.
I love
I
it.
love it.
So, Chelsea, I love your energy and I
Thank
love
you, you
what
too.
what you're bringing to the table. And I want to follow your podcast. So make sure that you
Oh,
shout me
you
out
can
when
come
you
be a
get it.
guest on it.
I'd love to. I'd love to. I
All right, I
really
will.
would. So please, please, keep me in mind because I love
Okay.
following people who are really trying to just improve the world. Like just
Mhm.
trying to really dive into the world and show the world that there's other things besides all of this
Ugh,
hate and
yeah,
political
and
stuff and all of
negativity,
that kind of
right?
stuff. Yeah.
It's
I mean, you
heavy.
could be curious of those things, but when you're
Mhm.
diving too deep in it, it
Oh, no.
depresses you, it makes
Yeah.
you anxious, you think you can't do it, like, get out of
Mhm.
that stuff, guys. Anybody who's
Yep.
listening, just get out,
Yep.
stop doing that.
Yep.
So Chelsea, when people wanna follow you, if they wanna know more about you, or maybe
Yep.
somebody's listening and needs construction, like, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Give us that. How do people contact you, follow you, all that kind of stuff?
I would say the best way would just be on my website. It's chelseahusum.com. So CHELSEAHUSUM.com. All I have, well, I actually have a free workbook on there I made. It's called Your Unapologetic Life.
Oh, I
So
love
that's
it.
free. It pops right up. And it's really just like a lot of my favorite habits or things. If I'm kind of in a rut or feeling stuck, that is the stuff I do. So grab that. You can see speaking my book. I'll just find out more about me. And honestly, like if anything we say, can I love connecting with people and I
Yeah,
have all kinds of stories to share, like I've been through a lot of intense stuff, but like if you're going through something, I am here if you want to reach out. I know you are too. Like,
yeah,
if I love hearing what people are going through and being able to offer some advice or be like, you got this, you can do
yeah.
this, right?
Yeah, I love that. Okay, great. So basically everything really lives on your
Yeah, on
website.
my
And so
website.
they can
Yeah.
find out about your book and everything on there
Yep.
as well,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Well, Chelsea, thank you for hanging out with us on
Thank
Straight Talk. I
you.
really am
This is
grateful
great.
for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so
So
much. This was
good. So
wonderful.
good. Guys, I told you, right? Best humans on the planet. I never fail, right? So make sure that you connect with Chelsea Husum. I'm going to make sure to link all of her information below so that you can go ahead and follow. I mean, listen, fill up your algorithms, fill up all of that stuff
Mhm.
with good things, good people,
Yep.
inspiring stories, people that are out there trying to change the world in a good way. Because you got to be careful. Once you start clicking on these negative stories, all you get is negative
Mhm.
stories. That starts to affect your mind, the way you think, the way you do things, the way you relate with others. I'm telling you, I had to change my entire algorithm. So start
Mhm.
following people like Chelsea so that you can be inspired and move forward to the things you want to do because you only have one life and you are not promise tomorrow. All right, guys, I love you so much. This is Neena Perez, Straight Talk, no sugar added. Until next time.